Erdogan said it out loud just now. Something incredible has happened for Ukraine. An explosive surprise from Ankara. Turkey is deploying weapons of death against Russia. This has never happened before. The super drone is already in the arena. The Kremlin is attacking from all sides. Capitulation of the Russian Federation. Triumph of Ukraine. The Ukrainian armed forces are erasing Russians in Donbas. The occupiers simply ran away. These shots blew up the internet. Putin's army was driven out of key positions. The hellish trap is slamming shut. Hell in Russia. The Ukrainian armed forces broke through into the depths. This is a blow to the very heart of the enemy. Collapse, a horrific catastrophe is tearing Russia apart. This attack by the Ukrainian armed forces was decisive. Moscow is in a hellish trap. Mega weapons are already flying into the Zelensky-Trump meeting. This will change everything. The countdown has begun. Shock from Chechnya when it fell out with the Kremlin. The master of Chechnya was put under severe pressure. You will be shocked when you hear what happened there. More on all this later in our issue. Hotspot. Urgently, a turning point in the world. Erdogan dealt a blow to Putin. Turkey breaks into the war. The new mega drone is already in the arena. The Russians are hysterical. This will wipe out Moscow. Something unexpected happened. Will Ankara be able to turn the tide of the war and force the Kremlin to capitulate? All the sensational details below.
Donald Trump recently named a president who he believes could effectively help resolve Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine.
Putin respects him and he is my friend.
Rex Hepto and Erdogan are actively involved in peacekeeping efforts to end Russia's war against Ukraine. He positions his country as a reliable intermediary. The first negotiations after the start of a full-scale war took place in Istanbul in the spring of 1922. Several rounds of negotiations between representatives of the Kremlin and Ukraine also took place in Turkey in the summer of 2025.
Turkey has always advocated a diplomatic path to achieving this goal. Now, after 3 years of immense suffering, the opportunity has finally arrived. We hope that the talks in Istanbul will open a new chapter.
Turkish mediation, a truly significant diplomatic effort, also proved absolutely crucial in the establishment of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, a vital and essential grain corridor that was incredibly important to global food security and stability. Turkish company Baykar continues to integrate Ukrainian-made engines, our own combat drones. Ukrainian engineers are undergoing training at the Baykar plant in Istanbul. They will eventually form a team to work at the plant in Ukraine, which is under constant attack from Russia during its construction.
Iron, concrete and buildings can be restored. What really matters is our will and belief in this project. No missile can harm our friendship.
The assistance to Ukraine from the Turkish side is not limited to Bayraktar and mediation.
We have demonstrated our solidarity with Ukraine in practice, providing concrete assistance in the political, economic, humanitarian and technical spheres.
Turkey has closed the Black Sea Straits to Russian warships, significantly limiting the aggressor's capabilities in the southern direction. And it has provided Ukraine with missiles with a range of 20 to 70 kilometers to destroy moving and stationary ground targets.
For 500 days, the Ukrainian people have been defending their country's territorial integrity.
The year 2025 changed a lot in Ankara's relations with Moscow. The Kremlin feels its old comrade distancing itself, realizing that Putin's allies are dwindling. And then another blow from Erdogan. By the end of 2028, Turkey plans to meet more than half of its natural gas needs through its own production and imports from the US. The Kremlin understands that for them, this means a loss of money and a reduction in supplies from Russia to the European market.
Our gas won't run out. We have more gas than the rest of the world combined.
It exists, but is it needed? But it's not all about gas. Turkey has implemented a decision to build 3 different warships, which will advance the country's navy another step forward. Turkey plans to develop one of the aircraft carriers together with Spain. Its size is comparable to American nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. In the summer of 2025, Turkey joined the drone coalition led by Latvia and the United Kingdom. The coalition now includes 20 countries that provide Ukraine with military assistance in this area. In 2025, coalition members pledged to allocate €2.075 billion in support of Ukraine, and they have already contributed $180 million to the Joint Procurement Fund.
Just as we declared our opposition to the war 3 years ago when the conflict began, today we are determined to make every effort to end the war through negotiations. In doing so, we continue our resolute support for the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of Ukraine.
Turkey has announced its readiness to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine. Projects are planned in the areas of energy, energy efficiency, social housing, and water supply.
Turkey is interested in Ukraine controlling the northern coast of the Black Sea and in Russia not establishing a presence there. Furthermore, Turkey is interested in the reconstruction of Ukraine. It's a huge market. Plus, Turkey sees an opportunity to intensify the development of its military technical industry, considering it can gain additional resources from selling its weapons. All of this, on the whole, creates a good foundation for being interested in this process.
Turkey, a NATO country, was prepared to send its troops to Ukraine to guarantee the implementation of peace agreements. This initiative naturally was condemned in the Kremlin. Officially, Ankara supports the territorial integrity of Ukraine, but it tries to maintain a balance between the sides. Turkey is still trying to avoid joining Western sanctions, which, in its opinion, allows it to remain an effective channel of communication between the Kremlin and Ukraine.
A sensation on the front lines. Ukraine is tearing Russia apart in Donbas. This is a triumph for the armed forces of Ukraine. The Russians are retreating, abandoning their positions. This footage has blown up the internet. The defense forces have driven the occupiers out of key settlements. Fierce battles continue, and every minute on the front line decides the fate of the war. Watch all the shocking details next.
The Zaporizhzhia direction. Drones from the 422nd Separate Battalion of Unmanned Systems, Luftwaffe, are destroying a Terek mobile radar station. This is not an isolated incident. In this direction, Ukrainian drones are destroying a huge amount of the aggressor's equipment. The partisan resistance Atesh writes that the Russian army is having major problems with its air defense systems there.
Our sources in the air defense units of the occupying forces in the Zaporizhzhia direction report a catastrophic state of their equipment. Sanctions, missile strikes by the Ukrainian defense forces on repair facilities, and manufacturing defects have led to a massive failure of anti-aircraft systems, including the Tor-SAM system. Due to a critical shortage of operational systems, the occupiers are forced to use tractors to tow launchers into position. This practice makes the equipment extremely vulnerable and turns expensive systems into easy targets. Atesh.
The Russian army isn't counting its losses as it tries to get closer to Zaporizhzhia to strike the city and its logistics hub. And the city, with a population of over 500,000 people, is only a few dozen kilometers away.
The situation will get worse. We've already seen bomb strikes on the city, and Russia is trying to get closer to a distance where it can also strike with drones. Right now, the distance from Russian-controlled territory to Zaporizhzhia is about 35 kilometers, and every 5 kilometers will worsen the situation for the local population and for the army's logistics. Michael Kaufman, military analyst.
To hold back the enemy and inflict unacceptable losses, Ukraine now more than ever needs military aid. This week, Finland will deliver a new military aid package. Also, Lithuania, Estonia, and the Netherlands will provide money to purchase additional weapons for Ukraine. And that's far from the complete list. It's all part of the Pearl program. This involves purchasing American weapons with money from NATO partners. On October 15th, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth arrived in Brussels and demanded more weapons for Ukraine. At a meeting of NATO defense ministers and a session of the Ramstein Ukraine Defense Contact Group, he urged allies to allocate more funds for purchasing American weapons. He emphasized that the Pearl initiative is aimed at bringing peace to this conflict.
You get peace when you are strong, not when you use strong words or wag your finger. You get this when you have strong and real capabilities that your opponents respect. And I believe that is exactly what NATO does. I believe that this is exactly the Purell initiative, so we expect today that more countries will donate even more. That they will acquire even more to ensure Ukraine can peacefully end this conflict. Pete Hegseth, head of the Pentagon.
As winter approached, the Russians returned to mechanized assault tactics, especially in the Donetsk direction. This video shows drone operators from the 93rd Mechanized Brigade destroying the armored vehicles of the occupiers. However, due to deteriorating weather conditions in the Donetsk region, the use of attack drones is becoming more difficult. This is what the Russians are trying to take advantage of. For example, to take Dimirovka and Zavkievka are small villages in Donbas. During the offensive, they deployed 6 tanks, almost 40 armored combat vehicles, and 40 motorized vehicles.
Russian troops attempted to break through the defense forces' defenses, throwing wave after wave of equipment and infantry into the attack. The first echelon consisted of mobile groups on motorcycles, followed by tanks and armored vehicles with the command troops of the airborne assault forces.
According to the Ukrainian analytical portal Deep State, the Russian army's offensive in Ukraine has slowed almost in half since September. One of the most important factors in the failure of the Russian army's offensive operations is the supply of weapons from our Western partners. Therefore, for Ukraine, the Pearl program for the purchase of American weapons by NATO countries is now a very important initiative.
Shock! Trump hits Putin. The harsh ultimatum undermined the peace. The US president stated, Putin must end the war in Ukraine, otherwise the end will be catastrophic. The Kremlin burst into tears when they heard about this. America is putting pressure on the Kremlin and the world is watching Putin's last chance to save himself. All details below.
Peace through strength. This is how Trump characterizes the peace plan to end the war in Gaza. The American president still managed to achieve peace in the Middle East. And although there is still much work to be done, Hamas is not going to give up so easily. It was Trump's triumph. Now he announces that the US will focus on resolving the war in Ukraine.
Trump doesn't want to waste time. He is now inspired and wants to move forward. He is determined to undertake new peacekeeping exploits. And God willing.
What is the essence of the Trump doctrine? Hamas came under pressure, and this is precisely the lesson, as the Wall Street Journal writes, that Trump needs to learn from the Middle East settlement. A lesson on the need for pressure.
Trump pressured Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stop the fighting in the Gaza Strip, while Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey in turn influenced Hamas by threatening to limit diplomatic support for the group. Meanwhile, Israel's military operation in the Gaza Strip continued.
So far, there has been no similar pressure on Russia from Trump. And although the US imposed high tariffs on India, Moscow's trading partner, no new sanctions against Russia were introduced. But now, experts are optimistic.
This inspires him to perform peacekeeping feats. That's obvious. He has already announced that he will work on ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. After all, both the war in the Gaza Strip and the Russo-Ukrainian war are issues directly tied to Trump's political reputation. And here there is a positive momentum that can be used. And the fact that Trump is inspired by this is obvious.
Western media also believe that after the agreement between Israel and Hamas, Trump may increase pressure on Russia. Trump's own statements about his intentions to take on the Russo-Ukrainian war are also a good sign. And there's also the meeting between the Ukrainian and American leaders, which is scheduled for October 17th in Washington.
Zelensky is flying to the States. Both Zelensky and Trump have confirmed it, and our team has flown out to prepare for the visit. Well, they're not saying what will happen, but I'll tell you right now, peace negotiations. The meeting is important. It's not about technical issues, not just money or tomahawks. This is part of the peace agreements. Tomahawks are what can bring peace faster, forcing Russia to the negotiating table.
And in this case, Trump's peace plan for ending the war in Gaza could become the necessary precedent to help end the war in Ukraine. At least in Europe in particular, they are counting on Trump to apply the same tactics used in Gaza to stop Russia's aggression.
This gives Trump huge opportunities to resolve other major conflicts. He has now established himself as an effective arbiter and peacemaker.
To resolve the Russo-Ukrainian issue, Trump might involve the president of Turkey. According to the American president, Erdogan is respected in both Ukraine and Russia.
He's respected by people, and he's a friend of mine. You understand why. I get along with the tough ones, I don't get along with the weak ones.
Trump says that Erdogan can help us with peace. Trump likes Erdogan, and in general, Erdogan is a politician who appeals to Trump because of his behavior, because of his strong vertical power structure. And Erdogan closed the issue on Syria. Now the Syrian dictator and murderer is sitting in Moscow playing on a Sony PlayStation, according to publications and Telegram channels. And in fact, Syria is now run by those who fought on the side of the rebels. This criminal was chased away, and Russia lost its influence. Erdogan can help here.
But there is a significant difference between the war between Hamas and Israel and the Russo-Ukrainian war. The so-called China factor. China has become an important economic and political partner for Russia, and this could either be an advantage or a disadvantage. If Trump can get Beijing to support the negotiations, then China could become the key element in persuading Putin to make peace.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
At this very moment, it's the end for Kadyrov. Shock. The Kremlin has crossed Donbas off its list of favorites. The master of Chechnya has lost Putin's favor and is drowning in new scandals. This blow could finally bury the political career of the Chechen Tsar. You will be surprised when you hear all the details. Watch.
The Kremlin's jackal Ramzan Kadyrov is once again losing ground. This time, even the media lapdogs have bared their teeth at him.
Is that normal? Done.
Instead of Ramzan, after the scandal with Stat Duma deputy Shamanov, who in 1996 commanded a group of Russian troops in Chechnya, the Kremlin has directed its propagandists to speak out. Now, in 2025, the general couldn't hold back at the parliamentary microphone and expressed outrage at the decision to rename settlements.
Cossack stanitsas, which are traditional Cossack settlements that have their own unique and rich historical names. Not only did you drive out the Russian-speaking population at the beginning, now you're erasing the names as well. This is the history of our state. What are you doing? I'm asking you.
To this, the head of Chechnya, who has always flaunted his special status in the Kremlin, reminded Shamanov of the war crimes committed and sent the old man in uniform to the so-called SVO. But instead of apologies, a torrent of propagandist filth was poured on Kadyrov.
I'm addressing you personally, Shamanov. If the word patriot isn't just an empty sound to you, gather your supporters and head to the front lines in the SVO zone. Let's see what you're capable of. Your vast experience, which you gained by tormenting civilians, is well known to us firsthand. Kadyrov, boasting apparently about the participation of Chechens in the special military operation zone, he unilaterally sends Shamanov to the front. Shamanov! Excuse me, but what right does Kadyrov even have to speculate on the topic of the SVO? He is not the one who decides who gets sent to the combat zone and who doesn't. We have a commander-in-chief, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. We have military leadership, the general staff. Shamanov, a professional soldier who served his country for many years and was wounded in action. And it's important to note that his awards are earned with his sweat and his blood. That's a fact.
That's a historical fact.
But what about Kadyrov? We've all seen the photos, some video recordings. Judging by the looks of it, Kadyrov has an entire gallery of these medals. But what are they really worth? He awarded them to himself. Let's compare Shamanov's biography to Kadyrov's.
It seems to me that many people felt Kadyrov was starting to lose his grip, because what was a fairly typical exchange of pleasantries between Kadyrov and General Shamanov ended with Kadyrov saying his usual ritual words about how such generals should be put on trial, and then nothing else happened. There wasn't even a hint of an apology. And on top of that, everyone knows that Kadyrov is not in the best physical shape and that he's preoccupied with his legacy, with what he'll leave behind in the Republic. Overall, this is a good moment for all those who genuinely hate him, both among nationalists and security forces, to test Ramzan and see whether, at the end of 2025, he still has any real ability to actively resist.
Ramzan tried to show, in an unusual way, that it's still too early to write him off. The Russian central bank has just put up options for the new design of the 500-ruble banknote for a vote. Kadyrov mobilized all his administrative resources in the region and started campaigning hard for the image of the Grozny city complex, which sparked an unprecedented interethnic squabble across the Russian internet. Not only Z-patriots and Putinists got involved, but even the so-called liberals.
It's not just anyone trying to impose their will on Russians, but Ramzan Kadyrov himself, a living, distorted reflection of Putinism. An unelected thug appointed by Putin who shows open contempt not only for Russian laws written on paper, but for any standards of decency at all, who threatens and intimidates. Who, while heading the poorest region in the country, lives no worse than a Saudi sheikh. He hands out palaces and Rolls Royces to his relatives at the expense of the budget. He gives his underage son, known only for beating a detainee, in prison. Government positions and awards. Kadyrov, with his style of rule, is completely out of step with both society and the times he lives in.
The scandal erupted with such force that the central bank hastily cancelled the vote for the banknote. But discontent is still simmering in Russian society. If before people were even afraid to look in the direction of the clan, now they openly curse them at every turn. Even the Kadyrovites themselves are dissatisfied. For the first time in the past 30 years, the Kremlin did not support them.
In the vast Russian hinterland, a powerful nationalist movement is steadily growing. A Russian community that absolutely rejects anything except what is Russian. That is why, in the current reality of the Russian Federation, Ramzan Kadyrov, as an official with special status, and with Chechnya, where everything is completely different, simply does not fit in. And furthermore, if we talk about Ramzan Kadyrov, as an official, his time is over, so to speak. I see that the goals and objectives set by the Kremlin for the Federal Center regarding the Chechen Republic have all been completed. That is, all goals and objectives have been achieved. It's no secret that the subjugation of the North Caucasus as a whole depends entirely on the subjugation of Chechnya. Today, Chechnya is subdued. Moreover, within the territory of the Chechen Republic, that is within its borders, a 150,000 strong group of Russian troops has been deployed. These are not just mere conscripts. These are highly trained military personnel who have been specifically tasked with fully and completely controlling this entire region, ensuring absolute dominance and stability within its borders. Therefore, everything that Russia needed to do before the start of the large-scale war in Ukraine was done with the involvement of Ramzan Kadyrov. As we remember, all the high-profile crimes and contract killings were committed either with the direct involvement of Ramzan Kadyrov or with the participation of people associated with him. This includes Boris Nemtsov, Anna Politkovskaya, and other journalists who were killed both within the territory of the Russian Federation and abroad. In other words, this entire set of tasks that was assigned to Ramzan Kadyrov in this case has been fully completed. Everything has been finished. That is, the project is complete, the contract is over, and now the question is what to do next with Ramzan Kadyrov.
It's ironic that now the very machine of propaganda and special services that spent years creating the image of Ramzan Kadyrov is now devouring him. It's quite possible that the little Tsar, visibly wasting away before our eyes, who lives in the illusion of his already lost influence, will end up facing trial. All those feats that were attributed to Don Don on Russian TV screens could, in an instant, be turned into crimes against Russians.
Urgent apocalypse in Russia. The armed forces of Ukraine have broken through deep into Russia. No more electricity, oil, or Putin's army. Moscow is caught in a hellish trap. Mega weapons are already flying at the enemy, and Russians are in a panic. Sensational news. A meeting between Zelensky and Trump. This will decide the fate of the war. You will be surprised when you hear about all the latest events you might have missed. Watch this.
It's another lively night in Russia.
In
Volgograd, the power substation has left the chat. It was tense in Saratov as well. But in Feodosia, everything is as usual. The oil terminal has been burning for 4 days straight. Within 48 hours of a truce, Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed to a ceasefire. Ready for nuclear war, Finland has built 50,000 bunkers. Patience is running out. The US has issued a warning to Russia.
If Russia does not stop the war, we are ready to respond in a way that only the United States can.
A new meeting between Zelensky and Trump.
We will talk to Zelensky about the war. I was told that they want to go on the offensive. And we have to make a decision about this.
Thick as thieves. Putin assured the new president of Syria of his friendship.
In the 1980s, we maintained diplomatic relations.
And back in 2016, the Russians threatened to destroy him.
If the terrorists raise their heads again, we will strike them with blows they have never seen before.
Trump addressed Putin with a demand.
All that we truly want from Vladimir Putin is for him to immediately stop the senseless killing of innocent Ukrainians and Russians.
A blow to China? The US is ready to impose unprecedented tariffs because of Russian oil.
All 85 out of 85 US senators are ready to grant President Trump the authority to impose tariffs on China of up to 500%.
This is the end. Russia has lost India.
Today Modi assured me that they will not buy oil from Russia. This is a major breakthrough. Now I have to convince China to do the same.
He shamed them before the whole world. Rutte laughed at the Russian army.
We know that their pilots are notorious for being unable to fly planes, and their captains don't know how to drop anchor.
The prophecy of Volodin, a similar speaker of the Russian State Duma, has gone mad.
There will be fewer people like Biden in the world, fewer like Macron, Merz, because they are mold. It will perish when the rays of light from our country reach them.
Urgent. Collapse in Russia. This strike on the oil refinery was decisive. There is simply no gasoline. After the strike by Ukrainian drones, the country is in shock. Gas stations are emptying, prices have skyrocketed. The price of war. Ordinary Russians are paying for Putin's madness. Without internet, without communication, and now without gasoline. What awaits Russians next? Watch.
The fuel crisis in Russia has reached even oil-rich Tyomen.
Human, did you see this? I pull into a gas station today, hand over 3,000 rubles. I say, please fill up my tank for 3,000 rubles, 95-octane gasoline. And they tell me, that's all you get, because you can only fill up 30 liters.
Gasoline is running out in more than half of Russia's regions.
The daily grind at the Rosneft gas station continues. There's no gas anywhere except at Rosneft. Funny how now you have to stand in line for a bit.
But as always, the authorities say the situation is under control. There's only a slight price increase.
The situation there is clear, so prices. The most critically important thing to consider is that gasoline is readily available at all of the various stations.
Well, maybe it's available somewhere, but people are saying otherwise.
Guys, there's practically no gasoline at any of the stations. And the right lane that you see here, that's all a line for the gas station where there's still a chance that there's gasoline left. Most likely they still have premium or 95 octane. I started filming somewhere in the middle of this sausage to show you what's going on. There's no gasoline at the stations. Give us some gas, guys.
Russia will become dependent on fuel imports.
So, in a country full of gas stations, there might not even be any gasoline.
Oil companies, it appears, will not be able to fully resume their crucial oil refining operations at their previous established volumes until at least June, according to current projections.
The year we are focusing on is 2026. This specific year, often referred to as 2026, represents a significant point in our timeline. It is the calendar year that follows 2025 and precedes 2027. We are specifically highlighting the importance of the year 2026 in this context. This is what's necessary not only for the normal functioning of the oil refining sector, but for the entire economy as a whole.
Russian oil refineries remain technologically backward and outdated in terms of production structure. When some plants stopped operating, the country effectively lost a significant portion of its domestic capacity.
Replacing certain components with less advanced ones inevitably leads to a noticeable decline in the overall quality of the product or system. In Russia, even 2 years ago, there was already talk about wanting to change automobile standards, essentially reverting them to the standards of the 1970s. And now, due to these ongoing strikes and the significant inability to fully restore everything to its previous state, there is considerable talk of potentially lowering the current fuel production requirements.
Accordingly, lowering fuel production standards will lead to cars breaking down.
Russian refineries will be producing gasoline of significantly lower quality. This gasoline will end up in the engines of Russian cars, which may not even be able to run on it because their engines are used to a certain standard. There is a certain quality level for engines, and now this level is being lowered in Russia. This will clog engines and lead to a huge number of car breakdowns. So this is the reality that is now unfolding in Russia. And again, this is yet another confirmation that when you are technologically backward, and Russia is technologically backward, perhaps it's not a good idea to go to war with the world.
In September, the gasoline shortage in the domestic market reached 20% of consumption. Due to supply shortages, wholesale gasoline prices have jumped by 40 to 50% since the beginning of the year.
It's obvious that Russia is already lacking capacity. Yes, there is still some capacity left, but not all the drones, as they say, have reached their targets yet. So this is not some distant prospect. This is the outlook for early 2026, when Russia will have an enormous dependence on external fuel suppliers, I repeat, in a country that's basically a benzopolis.
To at least somewhat put out the fire in the fuel market, the authorities imposed a complete ban on gasoline exports from Russia, relaxed environmental requirements for refineries, quadrupled fuel purchases from Belarus, and also eliminated import duties to start supplies from China.
In September, compared to August 2025, Belarus increased its fuel supplies fourfold. So they were supplying a little before, but now we understand that Belarus is playing a huge role. Because Belarus, yes, even though it has the most modern oil refineries in the former USSR, Mozyr and Novopolotsk, they still don't have enough capacity to meet Russia's needs. And then there's China, but Belarus, Nikita, won't be supplying, let's put it this way, at the prices that Russia wants.
By the end of the year, Russia could end up depending on fuel imports for up to 60% of its needs.
In addition to Belarus and China, fuel supplies to Russia will also come from Azerbaijan. And just like with Belarus and China, Azerbaijan won't be doing it for cheap. The price will be set, seeing how Russia is now dependent on Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan will, of course, try to take advantage of this. So there will be certain higher prices here. But Russia has no other option. In other words, Russia is now truly becoming more and more dependent on external suppliers.
Since the beginning of August, UAVs have struck dozens of major oil refineries in Russia, leading to the deepest fuel crisis in the country's history. And the further it goes, the worse the situation becomes.
That's all for now. For more fiery news from the front, tune in to the next episode.